Hello, thanks for clicking on this video and checking out the channel. My name is Zach, and on this channel, I mostly review science fiction and fantasy books. And today we are exploring another sci-fi, but maybe a little bit fantasy book, and that is the next book in the Expanse, number 4, Cibola Burn. This book is just, it's another book in the Expanse series. So if you're not reading the Expanse, maybe this will convince you, but maybe not, because my reservations with this book are that it felt a bit like a side quest. And I guess if you've read The Expanse, the whole thing, you maybe share that sentiment, because instead of being in space for most of the narrative, we follow the crew of the Rocinante as they play sort of sheriff on the planet Ilus. So that's the quick summary. There's our normal galactic conflict between Earth, the Belters, and Mars. Got the three main factions. At this point, book 4, they've been really, interacting with the protomolecule. The protomolecule kind of takes a new shape or form every book. And now in book 4, it sets up with this side quest, which a bit threw me off, and it felt kind of like almost like a filler episode of a TV series, because we're introduced in the start of the book that everything happened with the gate from last book, and then they decide that, I guess I'm being a little bit vague, but the planetary politics decide that Holden and the crew of the Rocinante should go down and mediate this disagreement that's happening on a planet, Ilus, between Belters who have chosen to colonize it, and then a corporation which also kind of has like mining rights to the planet. And it's a conflict between the settlers and the corporations. And Holden has to play sheriff, and he gets there, and we're introduced to kind of Holden's foil on the planet, which is the corporate man, who's kind of the bad sheriff. So I think I read this somewhere. That's where I got the idea that it's like an Old West film, or that kind of story, because the descriptions of the landscapes felt very frontier town. That's where it's an outpost in the middle of the galaxy now that we have access to the protomolecule gate. So they're out on the frontier, and the world is, like a pop-up western frontier town here on this planet Ilus. And it's very, the imagery when the shuttles land, it's dust everywhere. I just see this crossroads in like an old western town, with Holden facing off against the bad sheriff, Murphy. So that whole conflict, it as a whole, the spoiler for me, not the spoiler, but the spoiler of the review is just that didn't really work for me. I'm interested in space, where I'm reading The Expanse because it's a space opera science fiction story. But the saving grace, and this is the redeeming factor of Cibola Burn, and yes, of course, obviously I read it, so it was good enough to keep reading. But when we saw parts with Miller, so Miller is back, as he has been kind of every book. He's now, the protomolecule ghost, and he is guiding Holden to explore something on this planet. So that's the connection that kind of saved the book for me, that yes, we're dealing with this human level conflict down on the planet, but you do have Miller whispering in Holden's ear that, hey, there's something you need to go check out. So that protomolecule influence on the plot drew me and kept me stringing along until about the halfway point, when finally things start happening. The action really kicks off, not just from the people, and there's it's a very character driven like first half of the book with the people on the planet and the Belters. When we get to the second half, and we kind of see what is going on with the planet, and I guess then it connects why we're here in the first place, because yes, there is a reason that we're on this planet. It's connected to the protomolecule. It's very cool. So if you can power through, I guess my general synopsis and review of this book is, if you can power through the first half, the second half, if you're a fan of world building and lore, is a good payoff. So it was very cool to, as every book is cool to me, to get more information and lore about the protomolecule, what exactly was going on, how Holden and Miller kind of play into this, because Miller is now not like the Miller we know from book 1. Miller is like the avatar of the protomolecule. So we get protomolecule info via Miller to Holden, who's the only one that can see Miller. So that all works for me. I love that dynamic of Miller and Holden that's been through every book. The lore in the second half was great. We get some action. It's still very planet contained, so everything does happen on Illis. That this isn't like doesn't spread into space like we saw in previous books. That everything happens is planetary based, but it connects to the larger protomolecule, which is universe spanning lore. So that was great. So I really did enjoy the kind of the payoff, but I guess my overall impression of the book was maybe a little bit lower because it had that slow start until we got to the lore aspect. So while I enjoyed another book in the Expanse, that was kind of like my negatives, but to balance it out with a little bit of a positive is that maybe it's the time spent with the characters, but the characters are really growing on me. So yes, there is a lot of character-driven drama when they're on the Rocinante and maybe Holden is down on the planet, and we'd see there's some other plot lines that are of course happening up on the Rocinante. The characters just have eventually grown on me. Yes, 4 books later, yes, they're growing on me every time we see the characters. I'm becoming, just a big fan of the characters. So I guess, yes, the character work in general in The Expanse is really good. They've gone through some growing pains in earlier books when we kind of had that fight and breakup dynamic. But now that they're coalescing as a family, I guess you could say, that they're really, just growing on me with every book. And I do want to see what's going on with the characters, how they are not maybe growing, but just learning more about them, getting in their heads, and feeling like part of the family on the Rocinante. So I did enjoy the character work, even though, speaking of characters, my least favorite character is maybe the corporate bad guy McMurphy. So that was so, but Miller, Holden, great. The crew of the Rocinante, great. And then the lore explosion towards the end was, of course, super great. I really loved all the new information we got by the end of Cibola Burn about the protomolecule, kind of where they fit in the larger universe, being a bit vague, but it's cool. It's getting there. I'm trying, of course, not to read any spoilers, but I hope we go down this path. I don't know for sure, so I hope we continue learning more about the protomolecule, and I hope in the next book we return to space. It was good being on the planet, but like I said, I feel it did feel almost a bit like side story, filler arc episode, because we go from the space battles with the UN involved that send us on this mission, send us, the Rocinante, on this mission, and then we solve the problem. We get that kind of feels of saving everyone, and we resolve the conflict, but then it's off to the next one. And I hope it's more protomolecule heavy, because that is what I love. So overall, I think my rating for this book would still be pretty high. It was not a 5 out of 5 for me. It was a bit of a low lull from the previous books, which are more space based and had those sci-fi elements. Not that this doesn't have sci-fi elements. There's a lot of kind of maybe like The Martian, where we talk about surviving on a outpost planet. So there is discussions of an outpost survival. So if you like that kind of story, you get that feel of kind of the science of setting up a new colony, a new civilization on a new planet, which, to be fair, is the dynamic of the story at the moment, because in the previous book, once humanity got access to the gates, humanity just could spread across the universe and are reaching these new planets. So it does, I guess, fit in maybe the larger story that the writers are trying to tell, that this is an example of things that are happening in the world, in the larger human world of the Expanse, now that we have access to the gates, that there's these outposts that are cropping up. So I guess it does fill that, but I want to go back to, of course, not just the Martian Earth Belter conflict, but the protomolecule. So the second half redeemed it. Love the protomolecule stuff. Really cool. That is the great idea that keeps me coming back for more. And to wrap it up, that yes, I will be coming back for more. I cannot wait to get book 5. Have the hold on my library, so I'm waiting patiently for the local library to, me get to the end of the queue so I can continue reading The Expanse. So overall, enjoyable time, a little bit slow. First half, very character driven. If you like character driven Or if you like lore building, yeah, the world building lore does come around by the second half, and I had a good time overall. So overall, enjoyable read. Cibola Byrne, Expanse Book 4, and I am looking forward to Book 5. So thanks for watching this review and my thoughts and feelings on The Expanse so far as of Book 4, and hope to catch you back on the next video about The Expanse or anything else on the channel. So once again, thanks for watching and have a great day.